Hi there, my name's Laurie Hooper and I'm standing for re-election in the constituency of Ramsey. This is just a video version of my manifesto. Everybody should receive a copy in the post in the week commencing the 6th of September, but if you don't receive one or if you have any questions, please feel free to get in touch. Dear neighbour, it's been a privilege to represent you as one of your MHKs for the last 5 years. Thank you for giving me this opportunity and for putting your trust in me. Over the last 5 years, I've been vocal about the issues that are affecting our town and our island, challenging government from the backbenches and Tynwald committees, or driving transformation and change from within my departmental roles. I grew up in Ramsey, and my wife and I have made it our home, a place where we have chosen to settle our family, and there is nothing more important to me than ensuring that Ramsey and the Isle of Man are great places to live, work and grow. Now, I've tried very hard over the last 5 years to build fairness into government policy, to ensure that government is working in the best interests of people, and is held accountable for its failings. But I've always tried to be constructive in my criticisms. Scoring political points is not how to drive effective and positive change. I hope this manifesto gives you a picture of what I believe and how I would aim to represent you if once again you place your trust in me to be your representative over the next 5 years. Politicians quite often make promises, so here goes. I promise to do my best, to be honest and upfront, and to never shy away from difficult issues, and to always put your interests first. Thank you for taking the time to read or listen to this manifesto, and thanks to everybody who has provided input as I've been talking to you on the doorstep. If you do have any questions, please get in touch. So a little bit about me. I was a Ramsey Commissioner from 2012 to 2016 before being elected as member of the House of Keys for Ramsey in 2016. I've also been leader of the Liberal Vannin Party since 2020. In government, I was a member of the Department of Enterprise from 2016 to 2021, also a member of the Isle of Man Business Agency, which sits within the Department of Enterprise. I've been a member of the Cabinet Office for the last year and a half, and prior to that was a member of the Department of Education, Sport and Culture from 2016 to 2020. In Tynwald, I have been Vice Chairman of the Public Accounts Committee. I've been an active member of the Standing Committee on Constitutional and Legal Affairs and Justice, and I also sat on the Education Bill Select Committee. I'm 34, I'm a qualified chartered accountant and a trained auditor, and I've spent the best part of a decade working in the island's financial services sector, supporting a mixture of local and international businesses, before being elected to the House of Keys in 2016. I was once described by a professional colleague as generally an all-round good egg. I live happily with my wife Rachel and our 2 cats, doing my best not to drive them to distraction. Ramsey Bay. This has been a very big issue on the doorsteps. I want to make it clear that I will not support any development that would potentially damage our marine nature reserve. I don't want to see the seafront privatised. The beach is a valuable, free public amenity space, and I wouldn't want to see this change. The proposed housing estate looks to be over-intensive. Now, I don't support any intensive housing development on greenfield sites, and the beach would be no exception. There's also no clarity on how the development would be funded, or what might happen if any development fell apart before it was completed. I do not want to see your taxes placed at risk. I'm also not clear on how the proposed development would impact on the working harbour or on flooding. These are issues that are too important to Ramsey to place at risk. But most importantly, the first duty of any elected representative is to represent the people of their constituency. So if Ramsey isn't on board, then neither am I. So what's the current situation with this project? So I've been in touch with a number of government departments and they've advised me as follows. The Department for Infrastructure has advised me that no agreement has been entered into in respect of the proposals, and to date, the preconditions that the department would require before any agreement could be reached, such as demonstrating value to the taxpayer, due diligence, funding and planning, have not been met. The Department for Enterprise have advised me that they have not endorsed these proposals. The Visit Agency within the Department for Enterprise have advised me that they have not endorsed these proposals. The Department for Environment, Food and Agriculture didn't respond to my request for information, but I have seen correspondence where they reaffirm the importance of the Marine Nature Reserve. So what's possibly going to come next? Now, in the very unlikely event government do decide to support the development, the planning system has a lot of safeguards built in to prevent developments that might damage the environment or reduce the amenity value of the countryside or the coast. Your representatives have to do nothing more than ensure these are robustly implemented. The laws, processes and systems we already have will help protect the bay and the nature reserve for future generations. So what protections are they? For any construction to take place in the bay, it would need explicit approval from the Department of Environment, Food and Agriculture. Tynwald would have to vote on any lease longer than 21 years. And the strategic plan that governs the planning system has a number of safeguards built in, just 2 of which are Environmental Policy 1, which states the countryside and its ecology will be protected for its own sake, and Environment Policy 4, which states development will not be permitted which would adversely affect marine nature reserves. Turning to climate change, the environment and our biosphere. Liberal Vannin are the first and at this time the only political party to have signed the Biosphere Pledge. This means Liberal Vannin candidates like myself are the only candidates in this election who have signed the Biosphere Pledge. Now, we've done this because we strongly believe in protecting the natural wealth of our fantastic island and that the Isle of Man can be a world leader in sustainable development, with all the benefits that could bring. On climate change, we have to fight for a just transition. Now, it's safe to say that we on the Isle of Man are not going to solve the climate crisis all by ourselves, but we still have to do our part, and we have to do this in a way that makes the most sense for our community. Now, I know that transition to a sustainable economy and a sustainable island will come with a price tag, but I believe this investment will have significant benefits for the island, and we must ensure that everybody benefits from this investment, not just the privileged few. This means making sure that investment is targeted at people first. All climate change initiatives will take us closer to our net zero goal, so we should start by investing in actions that will benefit people the most, like home improvements and cheaper energy costs, to make sure that nobody is left behind. A big issue for the next Tynwald will be deciding how we power our homes and businesses. Now, it's critical that we have energy security on the island and are totally reliant on the UK. I believe the best way to achieve this is through a distributed grid, with a mixture of power sources such as solar, wind, hydroelectric, energy from waste, biomass, as well as increasing our redundancies with extra connector cables to the UK. This should help bring down household energy bills whilst securing our energy needs into the future. My aims in this area are to set ambitious targets to reduce carbon emissions, to target a net zero date much earlier than 2050, to introduce robust measurement systems to ensure government stays on track, to increase financial support for home energy efficiency improvements, increase 0% loans for business energy efficiency or carbon reduction measures, to ensure we transition away for our gas and diesel power stations by 2035. We need to promote further development of initiatives like the Ramsey Forest Project, promote the introduction of a new Animal Welfare Act, and support the introduction of curbside recycling or more recycling drop-off points in our towns and villages. Finally, to note, Liberal Vannin are also members of the Isle of Man Climate Change Coalition. Turning to planning, development and housing, it is now beyond doubt that the Isle of Man has a housing crisis. This has come about largely as a result of government not properly controlling development and not building enough public sector housing or ensuring enough affordable homes are built. This must change. We should no longer accept intensively developed housing estates or a lack of affordable housing provision. In the last 12 months, I've helped establish the Manx Development Corporation for just this purpose, to ensure government-owned brownfield sites are developed in the right way to provide affordable housing of all types, whether that's for rent or for purchase, for first-time buyers or older people looking to downsize. As we move towards our net zero target, housing standards on the island will have to increase, as well as more help for people to retrofit and improve their existing homes. Housing should be truly sustainable, and this is why I've managed to convince this government to adopt the Liberal Vannin policy on housing, to ensure we have suitable, affordable and accessible housing for all. Housing First is an approach that offers permanent, affordable housing as quickly as possible for individuals and families experiencing homelessness or housing insecurity, and then provides the supportive services and connections to the community-based support people need to help keep their housing and build their lives. I've convinced the current government to investigate this policy. Now we need the next Tynwalds to fully adopt and deliver it. A big issue in Ramsey is flood risk, and we must do more to ensure that new developments have adequate flood protection and drainage systems. We must also ensure that development does not increase the flood risk of other properties. Flooding can also cause issues for home insurance, and that's why I support trying to make the island part of the UK flood reinsurance scheme to help keep our insurance costs down. My aims in this area are to improve building standards for energy efficiency, including solar panels and charging points as standard on new builds. We need to update planning policy to promote net biodiversity gain. Update planning rules to ensure drainage systems are adequate before developments are allowed to go ahead. Introduce a community infrastructure levy to ensure developers pay a fair share towards infrastructure costs. Increase the number of public sector houses built. Investigate establishing a government equity release scheme. Reform the first-time buyer schemes and investigate ways to reduce mortgage deposits, such as a mortgage guarantee scheme. We need to reform public sector housing rules to broaden access, roll out more mid-rent properties and similar schemes, adopt a housing first model of government support, and enable and support people to work closer to where they live, supporting active travel and a better work-life balance. Turning to education, skills and lifelong learning. I spent 4 years as a member of the Department of Education, Sport and Culture, and so I've seen firsthand some of the challenges facing our education service and how this government has let down educators, students and parents alike. It's clear to me that our schools are in need of a revised funding method and additional funding to ensure that schools are properly funded to meet the needs of all students. It's because of this experience I was happy to support the NAHT with their candidate pledge, although I made it clear that I intend to work with all teaching unions and education professionals, as well as students and parents, to try and improve our education service. I am on record supporting the call for higher starting salaries for teachers to help with recruitment and retention, as well as more investment in our school infrastructure. Some of our school facilities are in real need of further investment, whether it's arts and music at Ramsey Grammar, STEM at QE2 or a whole new school at Castle Rushen. We must ensure education facilities meet the needs of every child and student. A concern I hear regularly from parents is they find it difficult to hold the education service accountable when they struggle to get the level of education and support they expect, especially in relation to children with additional educational needs. This has to change. As part of the next education bill, we must have a statutory AEN code to set the level of service parents and students can expect, independent regulation, and an independent education tribunal to ensure parents can hold the education service to account. Education, though, shouldn't stop when you leave school. We have to ensure that people on the island can continue to learn and gain new skills, whether to retrain into new professions or simply for their own enjoyment. We need a better framework to support apprenticeships and other in-work training, as well as better support for vocational training. Not everybody wants to go to university, but for those that do, we must improve support to help students with the cost of living. I also support looking at mechanisms to encourage graduates to return to the island, and as part of my role in the Economic Recovery Group, I've helped to introduce the graduate incentive we have today. We also need to provide better support for distance learning, especially for skills that we need on the island. My aims in this area are to increase teacher starting salaries to better reflect the cost of living on the Isle of Man, as well to incentivise recruitment from the UK. We need to ensure we have a proper capital investment plan for school and college infrastructure that meets the needs of all learners. We should reform apprenticeship, university support and vocational support, including better support for distance learning. I'd like to see the reintroduction of tax relief for educational covenants and extend this to cover tax relief for preschool, childcare and nursery costs. We need to reform the school funding formulas to better reflect the needs of students. I'd like to see a Manx Pupil Premium introduced to ensure funding is properly directed at students that need it the most. We need to do more to investigate graduate incentives to encourage Manx graduates to return, and we should establish a statutory AEN code and independent education tribunal. Turning to the economy, jobs and a Green New Deal. Now, there's no doubt that COVID has hit the economy hard, and no doubt in my mind that this is not something our domestic businesses can rebound from quickly without help. This is why, through my role on the Economic Recovery Group, I've been consistently pushing for greater levels of support and future investment. It's my view that we have to prime businesses to help jumpstart their recovery. Unfortunately, my colleagues don't all share my view, and I've only been partially successful so far. But it is absolutely essential we don't withdraw support too early, or we risk further damage and potentially much more longer-term economic harm. Average wages have only returned to their pre-2008 crash levels in 2017-2018. Now, I believe this was a direct result of the almost austerity policies adopted by our governments at the time and an unwillingness to provide the support that was needed. We cannot take 10 years to recover from the economic impacts of COVID. We must take a different approach. The island has bounced back quickly from the immediate impact of COVID on our economy, with unemployment and job vacancies near pre-COVID levels. But this brings its own challenges, many of which have been made worse by COVID and by Brexit. As well as work to close the skills gap, we also need to continue to invest in and explore new opportunities. As part of my role in the Department for Enterprise, I've supported the development of regulations that will allow the creation of a medicinal cannabis sector on the island, which could bring hundreds of jobs to the Isle of Man, notably in the north. Government must continue to be flexible and must have a measured and sensible risk appetite to ensure that we are always able to seize opportunities that present themselves. As a UNESCO biosphere, we are committed to sustainable development and protecting our natural resources. And as part of tackling the climate challenge, this is an important piece of the puzzle. I firmly believe that the island has a lot of opportunities when it comes to developing a sustainable economy, creating skilled, secure, well-paid jobs. As well as nurturing our own talent, to attract people to fill these jobs, we have to create the best employment environment, with modern employment law that supports a healthy work-life balance, good public services and housing that is affordable. And my aims in this area are to update employment rights to bring in better maternity and paternity leave and shared parental leave, create a system of statutory sick pay to support both employees and employers, utilising the Manx Development Corporation to create a landing zone where new arrivals can rent and make connections before moving to more permanent housing. We need to continue to support businesses that have suffered through the pandemic and be willing to invest in longer term support where that's needed. We need to support and encourage the development of new economic sectors whilst also protecting the businesses and jobs we already have. We must proactively support both skills development and inward recruitment. And we have to support businesses and staff as we transition to a living wage island. Onto a national health and care service. Now, a consistent theme when talking to people on the doorstep has been concerns around mental health. Mental health is just as important as physical health and needs to be treated as such. The biggest challenge seems to be recruitment and retention of staff. And as with skill shortages in the private sector, it's up to government to support our vital healthcare services with training and recruitment. One of the biggest challenges that we're facing with healthcare is long waiting times. And I'm firmly of the view that faster diagnosis and earlier intervention is critical when dealing with people's health. This is why I've been pushing the Department for Health to introduce a robust referral to treatment target to ensure patients should wait no longer than 18 weeks from GP referral to treatment. Essential to this will also mean people having quick access to see their GP in the first place, and Manx Care should have robust targets to ensure patients get to see their GP in a timely manner. Now, I appreciate this needs resourcing, but we need to first set out what we expect from our services and then work out how to pay for it, not determine the budget first and then see what service we end up with. Turning to long-term care, your health needs don't stop when you hit retirement age, so why do we treat long-term care differently to how we treat healthcare? I believe that our National Health and Care Service should provide for people throughout their lives. Long-term care should be provided in the same way as NHS healthcare, free at the point of use. This means we have to find a better way of paying for it, and I fully support reviewing national insurance to ensure we all pay in fairly over the course of our lives and then can access long-term care without having to worry about how we pay for it. In Ramsey has some particular advantages and needs. Firstly, we should make sure we're making best use of the Ramsey and District Cottage Hospital. It's a great facility that is underused. Our residential and care homes are also in need of further investment, and there have been long been plans to replace Commonmore, and these should be progressed. My aims in this area are to introduce an 18-week referral to treatment target for Manx Care as part of their statutory mandate, introduce robust waiting time targets for patients so they can see their GP in a timely manner. We need to complete a pharmaceutical needs assessment to determine if Ramsey and the North needs additional pharmacies to introduce competition and improve service levels. I support the replacement of Commonmore with a modern facility. We need to start the journey to transform our National Health Service into a National Health and Care Service to look after us for our whole lives. We have to improve funding for the health service as has been set out in the Sir Jonathan Michael report. And I'd also like to investigate a personal care budget to allow more flexible delivery of care services, helping people choose the type of care they get. Turning to government reform and delivering better services, I'd like to see more services delivered locally. Government is often slow to change, which means we need MHKs who are going to knuckle down and do the hard work, keeping trying even though much needed change only comes slowly. Now, I believe government services should be accessible locally, and so we don't always have to travel to Douglas just to talk to somebody face to face. This is better for Ramsey, better for the environment, and better for all of us. That's why I helped launch the pilot community hubs around the island. Whilst these are only once a month to start with, helping with digital inclusion and welcome centre support, my vision is that these will become a much more regular and consist of a broad range of government services: immigration, passports, tax, planning, debt counselling, registries, in fact any service the people of Ramsey might need. The pilot hubs have demonstrated we can do all of this with minimal cost attached. The second part of this pilot will be to help rolling out work hubs around the island. This means government staff can work from places much nearer their homes, and work has already started on this project. My vision is for a flexible office space in Ramsey where any public sector staff can book a desk and work, instead of having to travel to Douglas. This will bring more employment to the town, supporting retailers and the high street, as well as helping give people more time living and less time travelling. Hopefully then the private sector will follow suit, or this initiative could be extended out to include them. Turning to rates reform, I've been pushing for reform of the rate system for a long time, and despite this being a very difficult issue politically, I have had some success in the last term. Government is now almost at a stage where they're ready to push the button. Your MHKs just need to convince them to do this. Reforming the rate system across the island will help rebalance an unfair system. The total rates paid in towns like Ramsey will drop, being balanced out by rate increases in the parishes. I also believe that there should be discounts for single residents and proper consideration to be given to charging for some services like water or refuse on a pay-per-use basis, for example by using a water meter. This will give people much more control over their household bills. Now, it wouldn't be a Manx general election without talking about local authority reform. Tied in with reforming rates, I believe now is the time to look seriously at reforming local authorities. The lack of interest shown across the island in the recent local elections is evidence to me that we have too many local authorities. Merging local authorities together will also provide greater scope for them to undertake more services. My aims in this area are to improve and expand community hub services in Ramsey to deliver a much wider range of government services on a regular and frequent basis. We should invest in a work hub in Ramsey as well as other towns to help give people a choice if they want to work closer to home. We have to complete the rates reform project to bring in a fairer system that will reduce the unfair burden on towns like Ramsey, and we need to press government to reform and merge local authorities. Turning to tax, welfare and the cost of living. Now, it's pretty obvious to all of us the cost of living on the island is ever increasing, and there are some things government can do to help. The most obvious is to rein in the constant increases in the cost of government services. Now, I think we all appreciate things have to be paid for, but I believe government should be more transparent when it comes to explaining what taxpayers are getting for their hard-earned money. One of the biggest areas government can help impact the cost of living is through actively investing in our housing and helping build a more sustainable economy. By helping people make their homes more efficient, household bills will drop. By building more housing on brownfield sites and building more efficient housing, energy and rental costs will come down. By ensuring people have a secure roof over their heads, government services can be more effectively and efficiently targeted. On tax, we all know COVID has hit the economy hard, and as a result, the government has used a lot of revenue and reserves to help keep the wheels on. But our reserves are holding strong at just over £1.6 billion, and so now is not the time to try and push tax increases onto working families. If we do need to raise additional funds, there are other ways than making it harder for families to thrive on the Isle of Man. One thing we have seen from COVID is the number of people who struggle to access some of the financial support that was made available. Now, this is clear evidence that our national insurance system needs to be reformed so that no one who is paying in is left out in the cold when they need help. Our 0-10 tax regime is also coming under international pressure, with calls for a global minimum tax being made by the G7. This is potentially an opportunity for the island to really develop our approach to tax, building a fairer system with incentives to encourage people and businesses to invest and grow here. I would like to see tax reliefs extended to cover childcare, nursery and preschool costs, as even a 10% reduction represents a big saving for working families. As with the tax systems, COVID has shown us that the way we support people in need is in desperate need of being improved. For starters, too much of our system involves people filling out lots of paperwork, when government already has a lot of this information at its fingertips. Applications should be simple, understandable, and wherever possible available both online and in a paper format. Many benefit rates also don't reflect the cost of living on the island. The rate for MIRA was set at £230, and during COVID, incapacity benefit increased to £230 as government acknowledged that £86.55 a week is not enough to live on. Benefit rates should be linked to the cost of living on the island. So my aims in this area are to reform our tax system to make sure we continue to meet international standards, reform national insurance to ensure no one paying in is left out, introduce tax relief on childcare costs, ensuring all benefits are linked to minimum income standards so people have enough money to live on. We need to make it easier and more straightforward for people to know what support and assistance they're entitled to and how to access support. And where possible, we need to use information already held to reach out to people who may be entitled to support they might not be aware of. Turning to infrastructure and budget reform. Throw a stone in Ramsey, and there's a good chance you'll hit a pothole. Government focus always seems to be on the big schemes, and not enough on the basic things like proper maintenance. I would like to see more funds invested in day-to-day services, like maintenance of our infrastructure and less going towards overblown capital projects. The best way of funding this would be to ensure these big projects are better managed by reintroducing the capital projects team to ensure capital schemes don't keep getting out of control, leaving more money for getting the basics right. Better investment in road maintenance also has the side effect of giving us better ways to slow traffic. Now, there's a picture in my manifesto of a junction elsewhere in the world, which shows that we can make our roads better and safer without always sacrificing space for cars or parking. Often, government presents road development as a binary choice, cars or pedestrians, when often good road design can have more than adequate space for everybody. Good road design also helps slow traffic, without needing things like speed bumps, and Ramsey could benefit from more 20-mile-an-hour zones around the town, especially in housing areas. As part of a discussion around infrastructure, we have to start talking about population. We know that we need inward migration of workers to help fill skills shortages. We also know we have an ageing population and a low birth rate, issues which will present challenges that have to be solved. More people on the island will inevitably put pressure on our infrastructure, and so we must start planning for this now, before our services are stretched too far. I believe key to a lot of the reforms I would like to see involve reforming the budget process. Currently, everything is decided behind closed doors, and Treasury has a disproportionate amount of influence over policy. Now, I would propose that a portion of the road maintenance budget be set aside for commissioners to bid into, highlighting roads of concern in their local areas that can then be focused on by the highways team. This is a tried and tested method of budgeting called participatory budgets, and it's used to great effect in many places around the world, even in huge cities like New York. If it works there, why not here? I'd also like to see the budget system reformed to allow for better oversight of how your money is spent. We could, for example, restrict some budgets to a percentage of total revenue, make better use of cross-government funds, and promote and provide more transparency around how departments spend their allocated funds. Now, whatever route we choose, the ability of Treasury to micromanage has to be curtailed. My aims in this area are more investment in day-to-day maintenance in basic infrastructure, introducing participatory budgeting around road maintenance and investigate its use elsewhere. We introduced a central oversight team to provide better governance and control over our large capital projects, address speeding in Ramsey with the introduction of more 20-mile-an-hour home zones and better road design, reforming the budget system, starting a public debate around population, reintroducing regular in-town bus services, and investigate making public transport free to encourage uptake. Turning to social issues. Libraries, post offices and digital inclusion have all been big topics over the last 5 years. Now, libraries are far more than just places to borrow books, just like a post office is more than just a place to post letters, especially when so many people rely on them for pension or benefit payments. Now, I'm a big supporter of free local library services, and I would like to see everybody be able to access a library, whether in town or using a mobile service, just like I think everybody should have access to services provided through the post office. As more and more services move online, it's important that we don't forget about those in our community who prefer to conduct business in person. I believe this should always be a choice open to people, as one of the great things about the Isle of Man is the ability to talk to a real person when discussing issues face to face. I'd also like to see government expand the community support line to be a one-stop shop front for all of government, where anybody can call up to get information and support, instead of having to fight through a maze of bureaucracy themselves. Turning to drugs. Now, as the Chief Constable has outlined in his recent annual report, the island has a real problem with drugs. I believe drug use should be treated firstly as a public health issue. Many people involved with drugs face many other challenges, and support and assistance is often the right answer, rather than pushing them through the criminal justice system. Tilmore very recently accepted my motion to investigate the potential of this approach, which works well in other jurisdictions. Part of the solution, I believe, is the regulation of cannabis on island, breaking the link between cannabis and the criminals who sell it, and enabling licensing and regulation to make sure it is safe, in the same way we do with alcohol. However, we should never accept the import and sale of any illegal drugs, whatever they may be, and people involved in this should face stiff punishment from the courts. Now, whatever the situation, whether it's healthcare or criminal justice or just additional educational needs, we know that the sooner the right interventions are put in place, the better it is for everybody. This means we need to direct funding at those services that do these early interventions, like CAMS, the Police Early Action Team, and others. In the long run, this also reduces costs, as well as reducing pressure on other frontline services. Lastly, people on the island don't have access to the same sort of government-supported saving products as the UK, such as ISA accounts or enterprise investment schemes. There are also a lot of people without a pension provision, and we should explore auto-enrolment like they have in the UK. So my aims in this area are to ensure we have sustainable funding for our library services, ensuring non-digital face-to-face options in our communities always remain as government continues to go digital. We should review the way we address drug use and ensure people get the help they need. We should publish sentencing guidelines to improve transparency around criminal sentences. We need to review how we fund early intervention services and invest where it's needed. And we should investigate setting up ISA savings products, enterprise investment schemes, and workplace auto-enrolment. Now, I'd just like to talk very briefly about the last 5 years. So, over the last 5 years, I've held a variety of positions in government. Unfortunately, ministers always get the final say, so whilst I've not always managed to convince them to follow my lead, I've managed it often enough for these roles to be worthwhile. I've sat in the Department of Education, Sport and Culture, the Department for Enterprise, the Business Agency, the Finance Agency, the Cabinet Office, the Gas Regulation Working Group, a Zero Hours Policy Working Group, Committee on Public Engagement and Community, the Housing Policy Board, the Economic Recovery Group and the SAVE team. Having had this myriad of roles has let me get involved in trying to shape policy in a broad range of areas, but I've always been clear that whatever role I hold, my constituents and my principles come first. This position has resulted in me getting sacked from the SAVE team when I refused to vote for a budget which I believed underfunded the health service and the police, and I was also removed from a Council of Ministers committee when I refused to toe the line. In these various roles I've always tried to do rather than just talk, and I know I've had a lot of successes, including the doubling of preschool credits, increasing income for student maintenance grant eligibility from around £38,000 to £61,000, launching the Manx internship scheme, launching a graduate role recruitment incentive to encourage graduates to return to work on the island. I helped relaunch the National Insurance Holiday. As part of the business agency, I've helped develop regulations for medicinal cannabis export, creating a significant new economic opportunity for the Isle of Man. I helped replace the existing gas agreement with statutory gas price regulation, currently a price freeze, and hopefully a lower price cap in the next few months. I helped establish the Manx Development Corporation to help revitalise brownfield sites. I've overseen over £25 million of business support through the Department for Enterprise Financial Assistance schemes, and I've improved financial assistance availability for businesses located outside of Douglas. I linked all the Enterprise Financial Assistance schemes to the living wage. I helped review and relaunch the Isle of Man Government Digital Strategy, launched a community hub pilot scheme in Ramsey, Peel and Castletown, the next stage of which could include work hubs to enable public sector staff to work closer to home. As part of the Economic Recovery Group, I've helped launch and oversee all the COVID support schemes, including MIRA and salary support, and the Love Isle of Man gift card. I've consistently fought for better eligibility conditions and additional support. For example, I pushed to link the rate of MIRA to the living wage, not the minimum wage. I've pushed to increase incapacity benefit from around £86 a week to match the MIRA rate. And I also pushed to extend financial support over the summer. Now, I've done this because I believe we need to ensure businesses are robust enough to bounce back stronger as we come out of our COVID restrictions. Now, it's not all been plain sailing, but my approach has been to simply try things, and if they don't work, put them on hold and try something else. Government spends far too much time writing reports and reviewing and consulting on things, hoping to find a perfect solution. I prefer putting something in place that might help 80% of people and then evolving and changing it to help the remaining 20%. As well as my work in government, I've also spent a lot of time working actually in Tynwald itself and from the backbenches. And I believe effective scrutiny is the cornerstone of a modern democracy. It's just as important to have good, robust scrutiny as it is to have a well-run and efficient government. Over the last 5 years, I've tried to provide a firm challenge to government policy with a focus on ensuring that everything government does is fair, cost-effective and value for money. I've also been very proactive from the backbenches. A key part of the role of an MHK is to legislate, and when Ramsey constituents brought to my attention an issue that needed the law to be reformed, I was happy to take on this challenge. The end result was my first private members bill. A few other things I've delivered on over the last 5 years are this private members bill to improve leaseholders' rights, drafted and introduced following concerns raised by constituents in Ramsey. As a member of the Constitutional and Legal Affairs and Justice Committee, I helped produce a report on adverse possession, recommending changes to the law profession to improve regulation and recommending changes to the Attorney General's chambers to improve transparency. I also spent time as Vice Chairman of the Public Accounts Committee with our inquiry into genomic sequencing and scrutinising government's response to COVID. In Tynwald itself, I've tabled a number of motions, some of which led to the improving the bus card concessions for pensioners with disabilities, alongside a full review of all bus fares, limiting the price rises for the MUA, instituting a review of harms caused by illegal drugs, and helping establish the living wage. I fought for compassionate COVID border exemptions and against charging for tests. I sat on the Select Committee on the Education Bill. I started the inquiry into the DHSC moving endoscopy services away from Ramsey District Cottage Hospital. I've tabled in total over 726 questions in Tynwald and the House of Keys, and that's without counting all the follow-ups. In the last 5 years, 81 bills have gone through the House of Keys, and I've tabled hundreds of amendments, most of which were successful. It's a rare bill that I didn't end up amending in some way. For example, I worked on and was responsible for 147 amendments just to the Landlord Registration Bill, helping to improve the standard of rental properties on the island. I also kept a very close watch on my 2016 manifesto, and I'm pleased to say that the 27 aims I had in 2016, all bar one, has seen progress. 12 have been fully achieved, including increasing the personal tax allowance, increasing preschool credits, and more support for apprentices and incentives for graduates to return. 14 have been partially successful, or there is work underway, including establishing an independent health regulator, reviewing the tax and welfare systems, national insurance holidays, rates reform, and establishing a better system of means testing. I'm committed to following through on my aims and policies. In addition to my own manifesto, the Liberal Vanning Party has also produced a brief manifesto detailing a number of policies we as a party support. In relation to jobs, Liberal Vanning believes government should help create the environment to help enable businesses to thrive and to ensure everybody has the opportunity for a secure job that works for them. We have to continue to attract inward investment and grow high-wage, high-skill and secure jobs. We need to transition to a living wage island, ensuring nobody is paid below the living wage by the end of the next administration, and supporting small businesses as we make this change. We need to enable the transition to a greener, more sustainable economy, protecting our domestic, rural and marine sectors. We need to reform employment law to better support families through modern practices such as flexible working and shared parental leave. We also have to continue to support businesses and workers whilst the island continues to recover from the COVID pandemic, and enable businesses to bounce back stronger and better. On the theme of fairness, however we engage with government, everyone deserves to be treated fairly, whether it's when we pay our taxes or when we need to access support or government services like healthcare or education. Tackling the housing crisis will be essential through developing an all-island housing strategy that delivers on suitable, sustainable and affordable homes for renters or owners at every stage of life. We must ensure education services from preschool to postgraduate and vocational education deliver for all students and deliver an appropriate provision for students with additional needs. We need to reform our welfare system to ensure no one is pushed into poverty. We have to work to reduce the cost of living on the Isle of Man, and we need to upgrade our National Health Service into a National Health and Care Service, reducing waiting lists and looking after all of us throughout our entire lives. On the theme of open government, we believe better decisions are made when we can all have an informed, open discussion, when information is shared and when our representatives are held accountable for decisions they make. We believe in a commitment to open data, ensuring government information is available to the public as a matter of course. In bringing more transparency to the budget process, so changes to fees and charges are not hidden away out of sight. We believe in ensuring government is held accountable for delivering on time and on budget. In supporting and protecting whistleblowers who bring to light failings in government systems and actions, and importantly in representatives accepting responsibility for their actions and owning up to mistakes. Lastly, Liberal Vanning will support policy and legislation that gives us more freedom over our lives, whilst protecting the island through appropriate regulation and not unnecessary red tape. We believe in freedom from discrimination, freedom to have a meaningful work-life balance, freedom from cruelty and mistreatment for our companion animals, freedom to choose to have care provided in our own homes in later life, and freedom to choose our own path in life through ensuring equal opportunities to access lifelong education and skills training and supporting sustainable and secure employment. So in summary, my key focus over the next 5 years will be on jobs and fairness and the open government. In relation to jobs, I believe in revitalising our island after the impact of the pandemic will be crucial. Policymakers often talk about rebuilding the economy, but our focus should be on what this means to people. Flexible working, a living wage, lifelong learning are great aims, but what they mean is higher paid, higher skilled, more secure jobs with the education, training and support systems to enable people to reach their goals. Government services impact on all of our lives, whether it's collecting tax, providing healthcare or education, access to housing, benefit payments or supporting business. None of us expect special treatment, but we do expect these systems to treat us all fairly. This means government needs to move away from box ticking and start focusing on outcomes. As part of this, ensuring information is publicly available, as well as ensuring that policy can be debated and discussed, helps improve the quality of decisions, which means better outcomes for all of us. We should all have the opportunity to choose how we access government services and how we engage with government. Government must support and enable people in making these choices. Thank you very much for listening to this video manifesto. The election day is the 23rd of September 2021. Polling stations for Ramsey North will be St Paul's Church Hall, and Ramsey South will be Ramsey Courthouse or St Paul's Church Hall. There is a public hustings in Bunscoil Rumsey on Thursday the 9th of September, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. And if you would like a postal voting form, please get in touch. All of my contact details will be coming up at the end of this video. You can email me at laurie@lhooperiom.com. You can find me on Facebook at HooperL or on Twitter at LaurieHooper. All my information is on my website at www.lhooperiom.com.